All right, so thank you again for all being here. Debbie, thank you and everybody. So good to see you, and thanks to all the people on YouTube. We continue to get people subscribing, so that's good. And hopefully they're watching and absorbing. So tonight we'll continue with the Lalitavistara, the play in full, the Sutra of the Buddha. And we should keep in mind that this sutra is Buddha Shakyamuni as a bodhisattva in Tushita heaven. So for some of us, that might be a little stretch of the imagination, but nevertheless, was his talking, his discussing what it is to be a Buddha, what it is to be on the path, what the gateway is to be on the path, and so on. So he was doing this as a bodhisattva in Tushita heaven. So you can read the whole text, you can read the book, you can read the summary for a little bit more background on that. So let's begin by doing the short refuge prayer. So we'll do just a couple of our prayers just to set our motivation. So page 5 of our prayer book. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sangye chodang soki chodam la, Zhangzhu badu dagni kapsuchi. Dagi jinso ki pe sonamgi, drola penshir sange jupasho. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Manam kadam yam pesem centam she dewa dang dewe gurdang dempa jorchi. Dugnal dang dunal gi gudang drawar jorchi. Dugnal me pe dewa dang mitra war jorchi. Nei ring chak dang ni dang drawe dang namla ne pa jorchi. And now if we can recite the 100-syllable purification mantra of Vajrasattva to purify any confusions that we've had, any misconceptions, any malintent, anything to be purified. So we'll recite this once in English and then 3 times in the Sanskrit. Om Vajrasattva Samaya. Help to protect my vow, to purify myself. May you remain firm with me. Grant me the complete satisfaction. Grow with me. Be loving towards me. Grant me the attainments to master the powers beyond body and nature. Show me all the deeds of body, speech, and mind. Make my mind heart good, virtuous, and auspicious. Revel in the bliss of the 4 joys, O Blessed One, who embodies the essence within me. Do not abandon me. Grant me the realization of the indestructible nature. Make me one with you. Thus I signify my unity with non-duality. Ah. Om Vajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajra Sattva Tenopa Justadredo Me Bhava Suto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sitsa Me Sitsan Shriya Kuruham Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Saratada Gata Bajra Mame Mansa Bajri Bhava Mahasamaya Satwaha Om Bajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Bajra Sattva Tenopa Justadredo Me Bhava Suto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sitsa Me Sitsan Shriya Kuruham Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Saratada Gata Bajra Mame Mansa Bajri Bhava Mahasamaya Satwaha Om Bajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Bajra Sattva Tenopa Drista Jedo Me Bhava Suto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sitsa Me Sitsan Shriya Kuruham Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Saratada Gata Bajra Mame Mansa Bajri Bhava Mahasamaya Satwaha. Okay, thank you all very much. Does anybody have any questions or comments about the last conversation we had? Any thoughts? Anything that you'd like to bring to everybody's attention? Okay. The last time we were talking about the five powers of mind. That was 4.24, and then we went to 4.25 was the seven branches of awakening, which we talked about the endurance of samsara, the endurance of the suffering, of the confusion, and how it is that we are able to break through that through the gateways. We talked about these seven different gateways, the branch of awakening of complete mindfulness, complete discernment, complete diligence, complete joy, complete agility, complete absorption, and complete equanimity. So now we come to the next part, which is 4.26. So this should look quite familiar to you, I hope. Does anybody have any comment about this? Did you look at this? Did you know what these next points, it's number 75 through number 82. So does anybody recognize what these gateways are?
Isn't this the Eightfold Path?
Yes, this is the Noble Eightfold Path. So here it is expressed in some interesting ways, some different ways than maybe we've been exposed to before. You can look at your glossary, and on page or section G 170, it gives a definition of the Eightfold Path, which is just a simple reiteration of what's listed here as right view, right resolve, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right absorption. So that's identified in the glossary. And it also makes reference to this exact part that we're talking about here in this fourth chapter, 4.26. So to think about this, to contemplate about this is what we should be doing. So the first one says right view. To have the right view is a gateway to the light of the Dharma, for it prevents one from transgressing the rules. So what would you take that to mean? For myself, I've always thought that the right view is to have the view of freedom, and that what we are doing as ordinary human beings in this rebirth and so on is we continue to block up that freedom, our pathway to that freedom. But if we have in our mind that freedom is possible, freedom is what we want, freedom from all thought, freedom from our physical nature, free from our intellectualization, free from our conceptualization. To be free is what we are trying to do. So this freedom comes through discipline. So to me, the right view is the light of the Dharma, is to the light of the Dharma, for it prevents one from transgressing the rules. And so does anybody have any comment about this? What would you like to say? Maybe something about what do you think it is that prevents one from transgressing the rules? What would the rules be? Are the rules conceptual? Yes, Gunga.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Okay. Um, when I read that, I thought about the right view being related to understanding karma. And if you understand karma, then you won't try and transgress the rules by thinking that you can do things that are unskillful or create suffering and get joy from them. You know, that your actions in the world have reactions that are appropriate to what your actions are. And so by trying to gain happiness through things that are impermanent or things that are maybe just related to short-term um, happiness, and just thinking that you can get the happiness out of life just from the things in life like money and fame, those types of things, the worldly concerns, I guess. um, that's the wrong view. That if you understand the rules of karma, you understand how spirituality works, then you will understand that it's a waste of time to try and to achieve happiness in that way. And so that's how that right view, the understanding of the Four Noble Truths and karma and all those other Buddhist terms, helps you to prevent you from thinking that's how you're going to be happiness, and prevents you from transgressing the rules in that way. Thank you.
thank you. Yes, Bernie.
I could take a swing at this. Generally, I understand right view as the fundamental view of Buddhism. Uh, Impermanence, suffering, and egolessness, together with nirvana's peace. That would what I would normally understand as right view. It's a little hard to make the connection with transgressing the rules and actually uh, the explanation we just heard makes more sense to me. It's karma, but in terms of that, but generally, if you see things that it's impermanent, you want and suffering, you won't tend to cling to them, and you won't tend to break the rules, I imagine. So that's the best I can do for the connection between the two.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Zara, what would you say? Are you able to talk tonight?
Yeah. I don't have an opinion. I don't know. I'd like to observe other people if that's okay right now. I don't know that I understand enough about that particular sentence to expand on I think Kunga just offered something really lovely, and then Bernie. I don't think I have anything insightful, Lance.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, that's good. Debbie, how about you?
Well, I was a rebellious child and a rebellious person, so I hate rules. And instinctively, so whenever I see that, I really have to think about it. The Buddha is in that setting, he's talking to other enlightened beings or beings heading towards enlightenment. But ultimately it's for us, all right? So the rules that Buddha Shakyamuni as a human being grew up with are nothing like these rules. It's a completely different way of seeing reality. So to me, it's interesting because I'm supposed to be questioning these things. And if somebody says, oh, you're following the rules, it's like, no, the reason why you're following the rules is because you have investigated them and you are somebody seeking answers. And so it's also meant for the people who are just like rules, right? I grew up a Hindu, I grew up, I don't know, something else. And, I'm trying to figure out what's really going on. And so it brings it back. If you're one of those people that's kind of always testing things, then what he's saying is, you're going to come back to this, right? You're going to investigate it and you're going to contemplate and meditate and, stretch your mind and talk to people and really think about it. And what you're going to come back to is this stuff because it's accurate and it's real. So that's kind of what I got.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Alex, what do you think?
I have to. I want to agree with previous contributions, but I also would like to offer that from what I remember, one of the Buddhist proper view is not neither nihilism nor eternalism. So avoiding the extremes. For example, nihilism, saying that whatever I do, it doesn't matter. It started, goes, the universe doesn't remember about it. No past lives, no future lives. I can do whatever I want. So it's all just random things that happens. Then eternalism saying that, we exist and we exist forever, and that actually may also get one into the wrong kind of I think behavior, because I think some people say, oh, God will forgive me no matter what I do, and I will live forever anyway, so why worry about doing something wrong, things like that. So and I also really agree with you that the freedom, we have the freedom, and it's but it's kind of illusory freedom, because oftentimes our freedom can lead us into bondage. Like we can do something bad to other people and eventually they'll put us in jail for a long time. So we have the freedom, but we should be very careful exercising it. So the discipline is important. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Matt, what do you think?
I don't really have much to add beyond what everyone else was saying. What you all were saying was really resonating with me, especially with what Kungo was sharing. Really, resonated with me a lot of the wrong view of thinking over and over again that the pleasures, the samsaric pleasures, are going to bring some kind of happiness and aren't sowing the seeds for more suffering, which is, a big, has been, one of the bigger impediments for me on the path, I think, in my development. It's continuing to work through that, the certain lack of renunciation or something. And yeah, I don't really have much to add actually, other than what other people said. The rules that what I don't know what that's a translation of, but putting it as the rules feels weird to my mind to think of it in that quite that way. But I'm sure it's probably not meant. I'm bringing certain connotations of my own life and what that word means to me that I'm projecting onto what's probably actually meant by that. But
Very good, thank you. I'd like to say that, we talked about something a few weeks ago, and somebody brought up the point of being able to see the original text and how this was translated to understand this, because in one regard it seems to be, opposite to what we might think of, what I might think of anyway. I think we need the discipline in order to be able to do our examinations, to do our investigations, to go through our stages of meditation and so on. But there comes a point where you break through that, you cross over that, and then all that other stuff just falls away as as all these rules and all these conceptions just fall away. And to me, the freedom that we're aiming for is that point where, okay, this is all relative to being a human being, but the freedom is beyond being a human being. So I'll leave it there because that opens up a whole other conversation, but we don't need to go there right now. So thank you. So I think this is a provocative statement. And we don't necessarily have to solve this statement right now or any time, but it's something that we look at. This is part of the circumspection, part of the investigation, part of the contemplation that we go through in our stages of meditation. So we'll leave it there. Kunga, can you take your hand down, please? Thank you.
I actually wanted to add something.
Certainly.
So you could, if the word rules was translated to truth, then we could say pretty easily it was like not violate the Four Noble Truths. But I wonder if it's rules because of the rules they had to follow in the monastery. But then don't they sometimes just call those precepts, and wouldn't they have translated it precepts? I don't know.
Well,
That's all I ask.
remember this, that this is all before all of that. This is the bodhisattva who became the Buddha speaking in Tushita heaven, before he became manifest in this world. So, to me, the operative word here might be prevents. Is prevents, been misconstrued some way? Are we looking at it with our, colored eyes? Well, anyway, like I said, it's food for thought. The next one is the right resolve is a gateway to the light of the Dharma, for it leads one to relinquish all thoughts, concepts, and ideas. So this goes to my point of the first one, so to relinquish all these concepts, thoughts, and ideas really puts us in a mindset of what we might call samadhi. And there's many different levels of samadhi. But in the king of samadhi, and this is something that I would like us to get to somewhere down the line in our conversations about sutra, to be able to recognize that the king of samadhi is beyond all of this. It cuts through all of this. It cuts through to that non-conceptual and so on. And all concepts have to be left behind. All notions have to be left behind. All understood words all need to be left behind. How does it say? all assumptions need to be left behind. We need to cut through all notions, concepts, and assumptions. So it's all parts of language, isn't it? So
So Lance, sorry, are you talking about the special kind of samadhi that have these qualities?
well, it is identified in the King of Samadhi, in the King of Samadhi Sutra. It's identified as, and one of the features of the King of Samadhi is that it becomes the termination, that we terminate, that we cut through notions, we cut through concepts, we cut through assumptions.
Okay, so that basically you have to have resolve to let go of all these stereotypes, of all these assumptions and preconceived notions. That's
Yes,
the challenge.
yes. The resolve to be in that spacious mind, or we say spacious mind, but that's an indicator. Those are words again that we're using to be able to help us to articulate, at least to ourselves and to others, that it's something beyond our human comprehension.
It's also a lot of work. It's a lot of work. There's a lot of stuff you have to do. There's a lot of stuff you have to get rid of.
To get to that point.
Yeah. No,
But
it's
what, but what happens when you get to that point?
well, then it's very easy, but until you get to that point, it's really hard. It's like we're building a scaffolding. Buddhism is like we're building a building or making a sculpture or something, and we build a scaffolding. The scaffolding isn't the sculpture. It's all that stuff that we have to put in place to make that sculpture. And that is a lot of resolve, right?
I like that, Debbie, that yeah, building a scaffolding, but the scaffolding isn't the sculpture. I think that the isn't the sculpture part, I think, is really important. I like that.
Yeah, it just came out, it just came like that. Like, oh yeah, I know exactly what this is like. It feels like, when you go to if New York, of course, is filled with scaffolding, but also, if you go to India and you watch people build things, they use scaffoldings of like sticks or bamboo or something like that. And then, it's this very intricate thing, but it's not, it's just to get you where you need to be.
So do you think that we need to employ critical thinking?
Critical thinking, and also, we do a lot of thinking and contemplation to get to the point where we're not thinking about anything anymore. But also, it's like we're trying to be correct, right? Because I've gotten a little better, but I know that the way I see the universe isn't accurate. And then you have to get rid of your ego. That's a lot of work. That's very difficult to do. And Buddhism is sometimes it's not very nice about it. It's just like, you just you have to fight yourself to get over yourself.
Bernie, what would you have to say about this?
I think, well, everybody's going to have their own take on this because none of these are really straightforward and obvious. But to me, it's saying right intention, and intention, to my way of thinking, is a kind of thought. But it's saying here that we're supposed to be beyond thoughts, concepts, and ideas. So it's taking to me, the radical position that all intentions are suspect, and that we just have to transcend all thoughts rather than try to replace bad intentions with good intentions. And I say that strictly for the reason that I just said, that to me, an intention normally you think of an intention as a kind of a thought.
Thank you. Yes. Gunga, how about you?
I was thinking that, like Bernie said, these are not straight, like normal definitions of the Eightfold Path. It's kind of like what we're used to is the conventional description of the Eightfold Path, and this is like the transcendental version. So we're like looking at it through the lens of the Heart Sutra, you know, and everything is empty. So in the next one, it goes on to say right speech has no sounds, language, or speech, are all echoes, you know, so it like questions the concreteness of right speech. And it seems like it just questioning concepts. So just asking us to look beyond our traditional understanding of the Eightfold Path and seeing it from a broader perspective. That's sort of how I see these. Thank you.
Do we have to see these things as we investigate this with our ordinary mind? Or do we have to cut through our ordinary mind, cut through mind itself, and be able to get to that point of non-conceptuality, to get to that point of pure meditation, to get to that point of awakening where everything that we know as a human being just falls away? So just
Are you
the
asking me
idea
a
of,
question?
what's that?
Are you asking me a question directly?
Well, no, I can, yeah, sure. What do you think about that?
I think that if we're talking about beyond conventional truth, then we're talking about beyond what we can conceptualize in our head. So yeah, right. We just have to experience it. We can't talk about it.
Right. So going to what Kunga just read, the next one, the right speech, it says is the light of the is a gateway to the light of the Dharma that leads one to realize all the words, sounds, language, and speech are like echoes. In other words, they don't really exist, right? They exist as illusions. So as Kunga was just saying, these are all conventional devices to be able to convey our conventional thoughts through our conventional mind and so on. So, one of the things that, for me, years ago, that, when I realized I was losing my mind and how terrorizing that was, because everything that I knew was now at risk of holding me back. And if I wanted to cross over, I had to annihilate, or I had to kill, I had to, whatever set of words you want to use, I had to go through everything what mind is. Lose your mind. I remember, going through the terror of I can't lose my mind, I can't lose my mind. But yet there came this point where I managed to be able to do that, if only for a moment. But then we do these things over and over again to be able to deepen that experience, using another word, to make it deeper, make it wider, make it more stable, to be able to pass through that which brought us to that point, mind.
Lance, could I throw in something here? As I was thinking about what you're saying, I'm coming to realization that when we say ordinary mind, it not necessarily mean logical mind. I think it means common sense mind, and common sense doesn't have anything to do with logic. Common sense is what we normally accept as society as given truth. And oftentimes we don't think, why is that? We just take it as granted because we were conditioned by our parents, our society, that this is how things should be. And they may be contrary to you know, logical thing to do. You know, they may be good practically on a practical level, but like in the long term, they may be not so healthy for us. You know, I mean, they can become a couple examples, like in some societies, like it's accepted to drink alcohol on holidays. You know, in Greece, you know, you drink wine all the time, and it I mean, they didn't know. I mean, in some societies, like you eat a lot of rice all the time, eventually you get to diabetes if you don't do that properly, or if you don't cook rice properly and all that. So, yeah, but eventually we come across that, come to realization, well, there are other ways to look at things, you know, and go beyond these traditions, beyond the common sense. Um,
Well, let
you
me ask
know,
you this, because we got,
maybe even beyond logic, but I think that's a separate thing.
well, let me ask this, because we have some scientific thinking people here, scientific minded people here. I mean, the reality, or whatever you want to call it, that we are three-dimensional beings, but yet are there other dimensions? Are there 4 dimensions, 5 dimensions, 16 dimensions? You know, and are there points at which we have to cross over? We have to break through the barriers that we've created for ourselves that prevent us from going to those other dimensions, or that we are present in those dimensions, but we just don't recognize them. So, what would you scientific thinking people say about that?
I haven't been looking at it all that closely. I think there's at this point there are 13 of them. I want to say it's 13. In order to do this unified field.
The number keeps growing, and it was 10 at some point. But
Well,
but many of them manifest as very high energies. So like, I mean, yes, they exist, but normally, you know, you care of them only when you go to like beginning of the universe, or in some
arbitrarily close to the speed of light.
something like that, or like within the nucleus of the atom, you know, where they show up and stuff like that.
But is that all bottom up, looking at it from the point of view of a three-dimensional being and trying to rationalize, these ideas or so on? What would the experience be from the top down and being able to see all these dimensions simultaneously?
Well, it depends on what you mean by dimensions. Like when we talk about, 3 dimensions and then there's time. So we know it's space time. We know the 4. Other ones are sort of curled into. So we're experiencing them. We're looking right at them. Right? I mean, we know that what we see it is nothing like what's going on at the atomic level. We see using photons. Photons are crazy things. If we can fly around right next to a photon, we would see a completely different universe. But yeah, this universe is like 13-ish, 14-ish billion years old, unless it's not. Some people saying it might be a little bit older, which would make me happy. But, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. Black holes, we think, can create their own universes. And creating, if you take, what is it, like 70 times the mass of the sun and you stuffed it into your basement, you can make your own universe. It seems to be that way.
Okay, well, let's keep moving. Does
Yeah, let's
anybody
keep
else?
going, because perception is like, how much of that can we perceive? It's a really good question. I don't know if there are limits, right? I don't know what other people on other planets are capable of doing.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
I would just say it's more important to realize that what we see as three-dimensional world, I mean, it's not. It is four-dimensional world, and even what we perceive as time, it's you know, not what it really is. So so I think the first good step would be like to correct about like what actually four dimensions actually are. So there, and maybe start looking at things not as a sequence of events, but as a whole thing that that is existing and not existing at the same time.
all right,
Yeah,
well,
things
Bernie
like
wants
that.
to say something, so he turned his
Okay,
microphone on.
well, okay. Let me put this, it's a little difficult. Okay, now, the problem here, I think, is people confuse the word dimension because it has more than one meaning. Now, in physics and similar sciences, what happens is that you have a mathematical model of reality. And in this mathematical model, you have four dimensions, meaning there's four independent variables that are used in the equations. So basically, physics describes reality using a mathematical model, which has four dimensions. Now, as has been said in some speculative theories like string theory, they use more than four dimensions. They use 11 dimensions, 10 dimensions, something like that. Now, the first mistake is to think that the mathematical model that any physics use is the reality. A model is a model. It is not reality. It is a theoretical construct we use for predicting and understanding reality. It is not the reality itself. So when we try to rope in physics as an understanding of how the world is, you've made a mistake already, because physics isn't telling you how the world is. It's telling you how we understand the world, how we can construct a mathematical model to understand the world. And that mathematical model may have a certain number of dimensions. Now, in the common sense of dimensions, it just means a different place that is inaccessible to us. So we can say his mind was in another dimension as he walked down the street. It just means there are realms that are inaccessible to us. But to confuse the idea of dimensions in that sense and dimensions in the sense of physics, I think is an error. So that's what I have to say about all that. So.
Okay, Kunga has his hand up.
I just wanted to share a line from the Shin Ming. This Dharma truth has nothing to do with big or small, time and space. Here, a single thought is of 10,000 years, not here, not there, but always right before your eyes. Infinitely large, infinitely small, no difference, for definitions are irrelevant and no boundaries can be perceived. So likewise with existence or not existence. I think, like you were saying, to think about to try and see the world as a concept is really the opposite of what we're trying to do. We're trying to create a gateway into an experience of the world beyond concepts. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so let's continue. Yes.
May I just add as a wrap up? I think what we want to think about, not so much as dimensions and models of universe and all that. I think we want to think about like progressively refined state of matter or our being. So as we evolve, the level of matter organization and energy organization, spirit organization, whatever it is, there are more finer kind of vibrational states of an organization of the stuff in the universe that we made of and we are trying to deal with um, uh, that brings us maybe new experiences, like opens us like to deeper understanding and things like that. I think we should think more in those terms rather than how many dimensions are there, you know, and would it be fine to get glimpse of how it looks, you know, from the 6th dimension and stuff like that.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on. What you said is very good, and I think we need to go through the rest of these 8, and then come back and look at it as a whole and apply what you just said to that. So let's go to the next one, which is point 78, is right action. It says, right action is a gateway to the light of the Dharma, for it leads to the absence of karma and the absence of ripening. I'll say it. Right action is a gateway to the light of the Dharma, for it leads to the absence of karma and the absence of ripening. So my general view of this is to say, letting go of unnecessary action. Letting go of unnecessary action, which implies that some action may be necessary.
Yes, I think that we talked about this a little bit, the concept of wu wei, as like if you put it in Chinese, non-action, or the right action,
Yeah.
you know,
Tao
more
Te Ching,
harmonious action and things like that.
the Tao Te Ching does a very good job with this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was just reading it last night, actually.
So the absence of karma and the absence of ripening. The right
Yeah.
action that leads to the absence of karma and the absence of ripening. So does somebody have a comment on this? What does it mean to you?
Well, I think this is just continuing the pattern that we've seen in the previous, that right speech is beyond sound and language. Here we're saying right action is beyond action. It's, as you said, wu wei, it's non-action. Right action is non-action, which means that we don't deliberately conceive of any actions. We just act spontaneously.
I think in most definitions that we encounter about the Eightfold Path, you know, this fourth of the Eightfold Path is often translated as right conduct. It's our right conduct, our right behavior in the midst of the endurance of all this, you know, how we are purifying ourselves and so on. And if we conduct ourselves in a way that is mindful and has understanding to it and has comprehension to it, that it will lead us to the Dharma. So here we're saying right action, which is a little bit more specific, you know, and action generally is translated in the Sanskrit as karma. The karma is the action that we take as a result of a cause, and then that action, that karma, then has a result that then leads to yet another karma, and so on. So this right action here is saying the absence of karma, the absence of action, and the absence of ripening of that action, that we just cut it off and say, I'm going to stop chasing this.
Yes, and it helps gain freedom, because what is freedom? Freedom is when nothing, when things are not really influence you in a way that force you to do certain things. So if you do things such that karma is not like knocking on the door, or hanging around your neck all the time, you would have more freedom. So whatever action you do that not creating more of the karma, or like cancels previous karma, uh that'll help you, in my view. So it's not easy, I think, but I think that's a good way to move ahead, move through life.
Any other comment?
Well, Kempo Samdu was talking about, at all, like at the, not at the Vajrayana or Mahayana level, but anyone who manages to reach selflessness of self, that nirvana, the small nirvana in life, stops accumulating karma. I'm wondering if this is where that comes from. Protect your Buddhas, arhats.
Do you think that means an inactivity?
No, it means that you'd ask him about it, he'd probably talk about it a lot, but you stop accumulating karma because it essentially doesn't affect you anymore. It's like you've achieved the goal. And so at that point, you stop accumulating new karma, or accumulating karma, right? You'll die and you'll do whatever you do. You have some choices. You're not fully enlightened. You don't have, you're not a bodhisattva.
So is that the crazy wisdom that Drikung Kagyu Rinpoche talks about?
I don't know. I don't know very much about.
Is that the yogic state of mind, that you can walk through walls?
Or get, I don't know.
The
Yeah.
rules no longer apply.
Well, the rules no longer apply, but also, yeah, I mean, you figured it out. Right? That's the whole point. You get to that point, it's like, oh, okay. And then you have pain without suffering.
Is it like when Tilopa said to Naropa, I want you to fly, jump off of the cliff here and fly?
I don't know, that's another one that requires a lot of talking and thought, and I don't have any answers for that one. But yeah, no, I just want to make that point. The rest of it I can't really speak to. That's what, that's what he said, and I'm guessing that this is where he got that from, where it comes from, this idea.
Okay. Can we, anybody else have a comment before we move on? Okay, so the next one is right livelihood is a gateway to the light of the Dharma, for it leads one to cease all pursuits. Right livelihood is a gateway to the light of the Dharma, for it leads one to cease all pursuits. So again, to me, this means a path of least resistance, a relaxation of, we might witness it as a relaxation of anxiety. to cease all pursuits, cease all unnecessary pursuits. You know, we have to live, we have to do things. You know, we're in a society, we have to do things. We need to act, we need to be able to supply ourselves with food and shelter and so on. I've got to interact, but what does this mean? You know, cease all pursuits that lead me to obstruction, that lead me to confusion, lead me to anxiety. And what is it that cuts through that is the path of least resistance. So this is, you know, part of the electromagnetic energy field. The path of least resistance is where that is explained. The right livelihood.
So, do you understand that right livelihood, that alludes to kind of the way we organize our thoughts, or sorry, organize our kind of like day-to-day being, as opposed to like right view is the way we organize our thinking, day-to-day thinking, and action is the way we generally like respond to things that happen to us.
So one might be the intention. Maybe we could say intention for the first one, and then this one would be our activities, our mode of activities.
Okay, like profession that we choose, and like yeah, different activities that we engage in. There can be so many, but we choose to, you know, primarily focus on certain ones and avoid the others for whatever reason.
But sometimes we can follow a path that's full of anxiety for ourselves, right? And sometimes we can follow a path that is delusional.
Like working for the government.
Is that an oxymoron? Kunga, what you turned your you turned on your hand. What you?
Yes. So from my readings, traditionally livelihood has to do with, you know, doing livelihoods that are not killing or causing suffering or, you know, cheating, things like that. With this, you know, having a different, like a little bit different perspective on it, I think of the ceasing of all pursuits is the ceasing of this trying to pursue something, attain something outside of yourself. Just reminding you that you have everything already within yourself. You're uncovering it, but you don't have to go out, pursue it. You know, like, you know, our body has everything it needs to live physically. You know, we provide food. We don't have to redigest, you know, design our digestive system. We don't have to, you know, figure out how to live. You know, there's already a certain nature there in our body and how to live physically. And this idea is that spiritually, you also don't need to be pursuing something, not even pursuing, you know, in a way you can even pursue a spiritual path in a way that's unhealthy. You know, if you're always thinking it as something you have to acquire from outside of yourself, this versus something you need to bring out from within yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments before we move to the next one? Okay. And the next one is number 80 is the right effort is a gateway to the light of the Dharma, for it leads one to reach the other shore. The right effort is a gateway to the light of the Dharma, for it leads one to reach the other shore. So my general take on this is creating obtainable goals for yourself. In other words, if we sit in complete non-attachment, as much as we can manifest that, and we sit, and the only water we drink is the rain that comes to us. If we sit and the only thing we eat is that which grows on the ground that we're surrounding, that's surrounding us, sitting there, or do we have to know that we have to go to the other side, whatever that might be? The right effort, that we have to reach the other shore. We have to move ourselves both physically and intellectually and spiritually.
I wonder if reaching the other shore is meant kind of in poetic way of reaching enlightenment or reaching nirvana. What do you guys think about this? Because like Prajna Paramita is saying something, gone to the other shore, if I remember right.
Well, that's clearly what it means. It means reaching the other shore, and Buddhism always means attaining enlightenment. So it's not certainly not literal. It means to reach the other shore means to go from samsara to nirvana.
So for ourselves, would we be where we are right now in terms of our spiritual realization and being able to articulate it with our intellectual mind and so on, and to become the embodiment of that and so on? Would we have reached this level if we had been passive 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 2 years ago, 1 year ago, whatever, and not get involved in reading these books and talking about these texts and doing practices, engaging in meditation and so on? Did we make the effort to do these things? And as a result, we've obtained some goals, and to recognize that.
We're also we need a lot of time to make mistakes. It's
Yes, not just make them, but also deal with the consequences.
consequences. Yeah, no, it has to be, you have to keep on picking yourself up and dusting yourself off. And, we know it's a struggle. We live in a very distracting world that's constantly asking us to do stuff. I think you're right. I think if when you set those goals, you definitely, the other shore, I think is kind of a nice way to say it, because that sounds like it's a real journey, and it can be. And there are storms. Some you create, some other people create, or, you have to not be discouraged about that too. Yeah, I'd like to be enlightened already, but I'm not, but I don't want to give up just because I haven't finished.
Okay. So I'd kind of like to ask Matt and Zara the same question at this point. And let me see if I can phrase this properly. But, we can be spiritual beings and follow a spiritual path strictly through discipline. Here is my teacher, my guru, whatever you want to say, and I'm following these. I'm leading a noble life as best I can. I'm learning how to practice. I'm learning that there is something that is beyond our ordinary humanness, and I'm striving for that, and so on. And I'm doing that through a disciplined program, a disciplined structure. And is that worthwhile? And is there something that goes beyond that? Am I happy with being in that structure and staying with that? Is there anything wrong with that? Is that the way to be? Matt, what would you say about that? And I probably didn't describe it well, but maybe we can have a little bit more discussion to kind of flesh it out a little bit more. But Matt, what do you think?
Well, I mean, if I understand your question correctly, I think I think it's probably, well, I would imagine it is different for different people and at different places on their journey with it. I know for me, I need the structure. Uh, I need the structure given my own kind of makeup of how I am. Now, at some point, I think the structure or the practices or the concepts around it you know, can be the kind of like the golden chains or something at a certain point, or the whatever the metaphor you want to use of getting to the other shore and you got to put down the boat, or can become a trap and get trapped in our method, something like that. But that's not the risk I run right now. The risk for me right now is not having enough of the discipline, not getting enough of the practice in, and having the structure. And for me, particularly which obviously I am practicing within the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, I feel like having some structure, again, for me and maybe for other people as well, I think can be especially helpful or important because the tradition is so vast that it's at least in my experience, it's very easy to get lost in the tradition. There's so many different teachings. There's an endless amount of teachings and different permutations of the path and ways of going about things. Yeah, so those are the thoughts off the top of my head about it. If that does answer your question, I don't know.
Do you think that what we've talked about so far, these first 6 of the Eightfold Path, that these 6 speak to that discipline, speak to that structure?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it seems like to me the way it's laid out here makes me think similar to like what Kunga was saying, where it seems to be laying out the Eightfold Path in this kind of transcendental type of way, where maybe not this one as much, and the next 2 seem a little bit more straightforward actually, but where it's almost like they're like puns or paradoxes or something, where like the right action will get you beyond action, and in some of the ways that we've been talking about. So it seems like it's kind of flipping it on its head a little bit to kind of point us towards something beyond the concepts, or to kind of shake us out of our, habitual way of looking at things. But I think, whether it be in here or in general with the Eightfold Path and some of the other ways that it's broken down is very useful for me.
Very good. Thank you. Zara, before you escape into the darkness there.
No, I'm here. I was just doing. I didn't want to be distracting on video. Um, yes. So I think as you're learning a concept, so I think about this wisdom. For those of you who have the pleasure working with small kids, whose brains aren't like, they're just like, oh my God, what's going on, right? Like they're like like there's like, I can see, I can smell, I can touch, and they're just trying to figure out what is going on. I just got born and there's all this stuff around me. And that's being in the gross body, the physical body. And then adults like, oh, that's a bird. Or, oh, that's an airplane. Oh, that smells cinnamon. Because they're like, what's going on? As you begin to evolve into a spiritual journey, you need like something systematic to understand the concepts. And then in a spiritual developmental sequence, you start synthesizing and becoming aware and critically think. It's like, I think the evolution, there's like some analogy and symmetry, right? From the gross body to the spiritual body that you have to almost go through in order to actually get it. So that you make a conscious choice to let go of all this shit. Like you have to go through it. You have to become uncomfortable, and you have to become like, it's almost like these contrast conditions in order to know what you don't know. You have to fully explore, and you have to understand the concepts before you can experience it. And so you have to have the system laid out, and it's already been laid out for us. You have to experience the concepts under the guidance of someone who's wisdom. So like you are guiding us, all of us. Someone has guided you before, someone guided them before. And then we have to sort of drop the rope and figure it out on our own, right? Then you have to start like Matt said, let go of it. And then like, okay, can I synthesize all this without all the process? Can I, because that's really the goal, right? Is to it's almost like baking a dish. Like I learned the spices on their own, now I can combine my own dish. Now like I've learned all these things, now I can make my own recipe without all these formulas in front of me, because I've learned it, I know it, I've experienced them in isolation. And most people are not really good at organized information. Like the brain gets so distracted by the senses that and that's the ego. That's where the ego, the external stimuli. So you have to have these processes in place until you get to a certain point where you have, I've called it impulse control or control over your senses. And that takes a lot of work. And for some people, it may never happen in this lifetime because of other practical things, like if you have kids, or just the environments you're around, right? Like where it's constant one sensory distraction after the other. So that's my take on it. And where I am right now is very, very intentional with my home environment. Has become sensory neutral, and it has allowed me to start hearing sounds, start seeing things, tasting. I'm easier to eat and just eat. I hear sounds now, like cosmic vibration or just like buzzing or whatever people call it, tinnitus. I hear it now. I never heard it before because it was constantly playing stuff in the background. I can do one thing, like right now I'm able just to be here. I don't have multiple screens open on my laptop, right? Because now I have impulse control. I have enough intelligence now to direct my consciousness to discern what comes in and out right now, versus being just a bystander of the mind, where I'm just like up, 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 up. Now I'm like, that's not important. That's not getting into my mental digestion. I have impulse control now, where a couple years I didn't. Every email, every chime got attended to. And that requires a lot of intentionality. You have to go to the spiritual gym.
It eats up a lot of energy, doesn't it?
Oh, there's a level of mourning, and I don't know if you all have gone through this. You have to let go and be sad about, it's like, this is my new life. You have to let go of something, and you have to actually cry privately. And I've cried multiple times in nature, like on hikes, on the beach. I've had multiple moments where I just cried, and it's not like, cry. It's like just these heartfelt things where it's like just 30 seconds, but I recognize what's happening. My soul recognizes what's happening, and my gross body, this recognizes what's happening. Does that make sense, Lance? Like
Yes, is this current, or is this something that happened, sometime before?
it's happening now. I have moments like that. Like yesterday, I was on the beach.
But there's a sadness. You're feeling a sadness, to things that you're leaving behind.
No, actually, it's not sad. It's acceptance. I'm not sad. I'm like, so last night I started crying on the beach about my relationship with my ex-husband, and I actually was grateful. I wasn't sad. I said, oh my gosh, you had so many beautiful moments with a beautiful human being. How blessed. 2 years ago, I was like confused, like, why did I get divorced? Now I'm like, oh, like, gosh, that was beautiful, like beautiful moments. Today with my work, I'm like, I'm not fighting people anymore. I'm like you just like, I'm listening to you guys all, like, I'm out of my own way. Like, I don't need to make things more complicated than they need to be. So with
Do
some
you
things,
think that our conversation is more complicated than it needs to be?
no, I think the function of these conversations is we're having critical thinking conversations. I think that's the function. I come with that level of discernment to these groups, is that my critical thinking brain is on. If I was having a one-to-one conversation with you privately, this would be too much for me. If you and I were just organically chatting, however, like listening to all of you, my brain is sort of like kind of going into what I just said. My mind can discern through that intelligence and intellect what needs to come in and out right now. And so right now I'm prepared for that. But no, I appreciate all of this. And some of what you guys just said, like in the last hour, I've been digesting it because I don't know sometimes what I'm going through right now actively is so very experiential that sometimes I struggle to discern how to express what I'm going through. And so listening to people who are like, I'm already on like maybe a couple steps ahead, which is fine, which is wisdom you're sharing is helpful for me because I sometimes can confuse myself right now. Like the conversation on karma, that just hit something profound for me. I need to get out of my own way with I'm hyper vigilant about karma right now, and it's become problematic. And Kunga said some stuff that I was like, that's it. Like when he said that like an hour ago, I was like, that's it. I'm getting out of my way. I'm overthinking karma.
Okay, thank you. That's very, very good. Thank you both. Kunga's had his hand up for a few minutes, and Kunga, you wanted to add something to this?
Yeah, Zara was using that example of learning to cook. And I was thinking about that, and I was thinking, when even when you're learning to cook and you're following the recipes and things, it can still be a really joyous experience. There's like a lot of pleasure. You're not just like constantly looking forward to getting it done and cooked so you can eat it. I mean, there's a lot of joy in just doing the preparation. And spiritual practice, I think, should be like that as well. And I think there's always that opportunity when we're doing all our practices, no matter how new the ritual is or how long we've been doing it, to find that joy in it, so that we can experience that joy, so we're not constantly putting our thoughts on what the future holds, and we can remember that the joy of the spiritual practice, the awakening, is always available to you every moment. You just have to be open to it, right? So we don't have to think of our practices and our trainings as drudgery, just more opportunities to experience that opening and that joy, through these different practices. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so let me move. Yes, Matt, you wanted to add something?
I was going to ask a question, everyone, but it might be taking us,
No,
I mean,
please. Go
tearing us
ahead.
too much off what
No, please, go ahead.
for those of you, which I guess probably everyone, I guess, but who maybe had more experience on the path, more fruitful path. Did you all? Because Sarah, when you're talking, especially recently, it really hits me a lot. And did you all go through a similar process of like really needing to cut out sensory input from your life significantly?
For
For anyone,
myself,
and you go,
absolutely.
oh yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, and making choices and dropping friends and not doing things that I used to do. And yes, a complete reevaluation of my life. Yes, I think that's part of the process.
mm. Did you like stop listening to music and TV and all of these things?
Oh, absolutely.
Really,
For a long time, for years.
really.
Yeah.
Well, all I can say is repeat what Kempo Kartar said once about renunciation. This is the subject that comes up. He says it's more like when the weather gets warm in the spring and then it turns to summer, you automatically don't wear the coats and you don't wear the clothes, heavy clothes and sweaters that you used to. Nobody tells you that you have to take off the coat and take off the sweaters. You just realize that they're not serving any purpose anymore. And that's what renunciation really is like. You give things up at the rate that you decide that they don't make sense anymore to you. You don't give them up with the hope of being more realized or anything like that. I mean, in terms of practice period, certainly you're going to be cutting down on things, but in daily life, you just give things up when you realize they no longer make any more sense to you. And you don't try to rush the process.
Yeah, sometimes you don't even realize that you did it. You're driving, for 2 hours, you say, I didn't even turn the radio on.
Matt, if that's helpful, because I'm going through that right now, like I have these habitual tendencies, and what I recognized, I use my nails as an example. Like I constantly for years have done these elaborate nail designs, and so attached every year, every month going in. So I got my nails done on Saturday, and actually it was hilarious. You guys will appreciate this as a practical. I was like, I don't need any more. Like it was like I didn't want the like I just want her to like file my nails. I like the beautiful interaction with her. She'd been with her for 10 years. It was actually comical, and I had compassionate. It was painful for her not to paint my nails. Kelly, for 10 years. Like I said, no, I don't want anything. She goes, please let me put something, even like a clear gloss. She had to put something on it. And I looked at her in the face and I said, Zara, let her have just, yes. I said, you know what? Absolutely. Go ahead. Put the clear nail polish on my nails. She had to do something. It was more painful for her than it was for me. Just because I just wanted her to do my cuticles and cut or whatever. But to what Bernie is saying is actually correct. I just like it's painful for me to turn on the TV, Matt, if that makes sense. And it just happened. It was like, oh, why am I watching? Why am I turning on Netflix? I was like, I'd rather just go to the beach and just listen to the ocean. It was weird. And then all it's like certain people, I just know not to talk to them anymore. It's not even painful. Like I used to beat myself up and be like, oh my gosh, negative karma, I'm letting this person down. I just all of a sudden knew like everything's okay. Like I don't know, it's weird. I stopped guilting myself because I knew I was like, I don't know. I knew it was better for me and the rest of the world if I just allow, like you just said, the pants, you just put your snow coat on or you put your shorts on and it just happened. But I'm experiencing it now. There's a couple friendship. Well, I say
All right, well,
friendship.
let's carry on. We're getting low in time, and I'd
Okay.
like to be able to finish this section tonight. So thank you very much for what you said, and it was very good. So, does anybody else have anything that you'd like to add of your personal experience of what Matt was asking?
I could add to that. For me, it took a pretty major life event to make those decisions. I had to have open heart surgery, and just that encounterment with impermanence made me change a lot of things in my everyday life. But then as time has gone on, it's been more like I just don't have time for those things anymore. So busy with the Dharma, it's like nothing else can fit in. There's no room. And so and the trick is, even when there's still things, and I mean, I still like music. I listen to music when I work out. um I can appreciate that. I still watch some things on TV, on Netflix. But you can still watch those things and enjoy those things with a sort of eye towards Dharma, and kind of use those things as ways to, you know pick out examples of impermanence and interdependence, and all those things that we learn about in Buddhism. We can see those things in our experience of movies and radio and music and all those things that are going on a lot around us. Um, just not mindlessly consuming them, so we have no idea of what we're consuming, and we don't realize how that's going to affect us later. If we can, I think that's the trick. That's what you're trying to avoid, just that mindless consumption. Thank you.
Debbie, how about you? Do you have anything to add to this?
Yeah,
What's your experience been in being able to let things go?
it's funny, I did agree with what Kuya said. I'm all over the map. You can't take things seriously. I mean, yeah, you do end up truncating your interactions with people. They might not be horrible. It's just that people will become draining after a while. And you do have to care for the people in your life, but there are people you have to let go. You do become, I'm boring. I'm more boring now than I used to be. I'm not bored. Buddhism is something that, I'm gonna listen to Nine Inch Nails because it actually calms me down. But just don't take it seriously, right? We have to do things. We have to eat. There's benefits to relaxing, watching British murder shows or whatever. Um, I'm trying to never not be a Buddhist. It should always be there, and it should be fun and interesting. There's definitely parts that are work, but it's good to be a Buddhist. So it's important to remember that too. And then, sometimes you do need to, cut your brain loose, especially if you have either a very draining job or you have a stressful job. And I have a draining, stressful job. I'm not going to beat myself up about the fact that when I come home, I need to zone out for a little bit before I can do anything else. But yeah, it does come in waves and you do change. And, the beauty of the world sneaks in there. So it's-
Very good, thank you. And Alex, do you have anything you'd like to add? And please keep it short because we don't have too much time.
Not much to add, except one day I realized I don't have to listen to forecast, if I can just look out of the window and know what to wear. I still listen to forecast, like if I need to know what to wear, like for the next week, if I'm in Baltimore, it's not at home. But I think we are being conditioned on doing many things that are not really necessary and actually distract us from doing what's best for us. So I think there was a point in my life also to reevaluate all that, and yeah, now I'm not really listening to the news only to uh, only to know what they're trying to make us think, as opposed to what's really happening in the world. You can get it easily from news now. Things like that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
So Matt, do you want to follow up with a statement or anything, listening to what everybody had to say?
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, all these things are things that have been happening to me, or to me, with me, or whatever, where I've lost and things have just kind of naturally fallen away, certain things, but I guess my the spirit behind my question has just been realizing more and more for quite some time the truth in what a lot of you all were saying of even just the raw sensory input just being too high to be able to stabilize my mind in the way it needs to be stabilized. And I I really appreciate all of your all's perspective on it, and some of it I think needs to fall away, and I know naturally kind of fall away over time, and some of it for me I also need to give like a push with how I am too, because I get very addictive with things. There's been periods in my life where I've done things addictively for many years that I knew for many years were causing me a lot of pain, and it wouldn't stop me from doing it. um but yeah, I really appreciate all y'all's your contributions and help.
Okay, great. So let's go on to the next point here, point 81, which is mindfulness. It says, right mindfulness is a gateway to the light of the Dharma, for it leads to the absence of mindlessness and mental engagements. So I'll say it again. Right mindfulness is a gateway to the light of the Dharma, for it leads to the absence of mindlessness and mental engagements. So to me, this means that we're developing one-pointed mindfulness, that we're not allowing ourselves to go into a mindlessness state, and pursuing these mental engagements that seem to have this, this whirlpool of time and effort and so on, like that, energy, all go into this whirlpool that just sucks all the, our energy out, our knowledge, whatever. And that what this speaks to me is the middle way. And this mindfulness is the entranceway, if you will, to the Sambhogaya. That the first part, everything that we were talking about with these first 6 points, all were talking about things that could be explained within the Hinayana, within the discipline teachings of the Buddha. Now we're moving to the next part of the Sambhogaya, which is the enjoyment body. And that we're realizing that if we do these things for the benefit of other beings, it's automatically being able to reduce our fascination, our addiction to ourselves. The first part in the Hinayana, you're dealing with yourself. It's your own personal liberation that you're thinking about all the time. Now, with this mindfulness, you're thinking of it in terms of other beings. And through that, it becomes a cleanser for those thoughts that you hold on to for yourself. So does somebody else have a comment about this? The mindfulness is a gateway to the light of the Dharma.
Yes, I often, as a scientist, I also engage in those mental constructions, and that's actually not a very good habit to theorize, engage in this kind of mental self-conversation without a specific purpose, So there is a great wisdom in having value awareness more than mindful constructions. And I think there are many stories about this in Buddhism, and as a practitioner of martial arts, that's especially important because you don't want to get killed while you're thinking about how wonderful your life is going to be in the next hour or year or what decade. What really matters is what's going on right now.
Okay, anybody else have a comment about mindfulness? And in terms of what I was trying to say, the Sambhogagaya, the subtle enjoyment body. The Hinayana is more, creating this field for ourselves, this Buddha field for ourselves, so to speak, more like a bodhisattva field, if you will. But it sustains our body and our speech and our mind in this more limited capacity as we are working our way along the pathway. Now we're coming to a point where the pathway is opening up to more possibilities of other thought, of otherliness, rather than being, just thinking about ourselves. Okay, well, if there's
Yes,
no...
may I just add, I think when we engage in this mindfulness, and I think it meant to focus our mind not on ourselves, but on what is happening around us, maybe inside us, but not really on our ego. And that is how I think our mind is also more habituated to like stop constantly thinking about ourselves and kind of be able to switch attention to what really matters, in fact.
Would you say that there is a devotion that we are calling on, that we are developing, that we're using for the benefit of others, that we have this devotion to the Dharma, devotion to the enlightenment of other beings, and we're cultivating that devotion, and that at some point it kind of gives way to we're naturally that way. I often use the example of the sun, that we're igniting the sun within ourselves to be able to radiate this light of mindfulness, of love and kindness and bodhicitta and so on for all beings. So this devotion to be able to do that, which to me is a hallmark of the Sambhogagaya.
Lance, how many people do you think like know what their actual personal dharma is, like what they're should be giving out to others? So like to be bodhisattva, but also whatever your specific, like whether you're a lawyer, bodhisattva, or a teacher or a mechanic, like how many or versus they're just on autopilot because they've just been told you just got to do this by someone else and they never questioned it.
Well, it depends what their intention is, what their motivation is, what their awareness is. Are they doing it blindly? They might be wanting to help other people, but they're not doing it as a spiritual in spiritual terms. They're not looking at it in spiritual terms. Does that negate what they're doing? Of course not. You know, it's great stuff, but does being awakened to the spiritual body, to the spiritual presence, does that now give a whole new purpose, a whole new meaning to life that wasn't there at that other level?
Okay.
Does that make any sense to you?
Yes, I'm thinking
Like
of
you were doing things for children and for other people. You've been doing that for years. But
yes.
now through your spirituality, it's got a whole different way in which it moves.
Yes, exactly. So the one thing that has changed, I don't care about making money anymore. I know the money will come. I don't care so much about numbers. I was always doing it, but that changed significantly, and my compassion has changed. I'm not so quick to be angry when people can't see things my way. That changed once I realized. I'm thinking of the words devotion and faith together. I know they're not the same, but I think you have to have devotion before you can have faith. I don't know. That's coming up in my brain. I don't know.
Okay. And there's also a generosity to let people discover things for themselves.
Can you talk about what you mean? Because I think going back to an hour ago when Kunga was talking about karma, there's some dots that are connecting for me. Is it generous to let people experience, although you see they're like, I don't want anyone to ever get hit by a car, right? Like, because then I would be, well, I shouldn't be an observer. I should have been provided action in that moment. But can you expand on what that? Because
Well,
I'm
I'll use this session that we're having. You know, I could have, or any one of us could have been just giving a lecture on all of this, hitting all these points, talking about all these things. I could have had 3 pages of notes to talk about this. But instead, we're practicing a generosity to let everybody to kind of discover it for themselves in their own terms. Some of us may have it that we've already talked about it, we've already thought about these things. Others, maybe we're hearing it for the first time and processing it for the first time. But to have that generosity of self discovery is my point.
You mean so within ourselves and to allow other people to have their light bulb moments and you can be an observer of it.
Yeah, and you can be like a tugboat sometimes. You know, if you know that you've got a handle on what it is you're talking about, you can kind of move people along by the questions you ask or the statements that you make and so on. And, you know, we may not be there right now, but maybe in a year, maybe 2 years, maybe tomorrow, you might be in a situation where you can do that. You know, rather than being just a lecturer. That's my point. It's the lecture versus the discussion group. And so the generosity is to allow people to discover it themselves. You know, the example you gave of the woman who was doing your nails, you finally gave in to her beseeching and said, and you were generous and said, all right, go ahead and put the lacquer on. Go ahead and do it. If that's what makes you happy, go ahead and do it. To me, it doesn't make a difference, but I'll be generous and let you do it. So that's one example. You know, when people offer something to you, you know, that's a, you know, if they're giving you a gift, and you say, oh, I don't need that, you know, oh, I know you don't have, you know, a lot of money, you shouldn't be doing something like this, that you're being generous to them by letting them be generous to you.
So that's that. I'm gonna think about what you just said, because when you can get to that point, you're 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 getting it. You're getting it, you're synthesizing it, and you're actually applying the Dharma. When you're able not to think about it as a yes or no, or I have to follow the rule this strictly, like I can't have the nail polish because it's a distraction to Zara. When it no longer is a distraction in that way, then I've had an aha moment.
Right.
Got it.
Okay. So let's go on to the next point, and then we're going to try and tie this all together. So the last point here is right absorption is a gateway to the light of the Dharma, for it leads to the attainment of the absorption of an undisturbed mind. So I'll say it again. Right absorption is a gateway to the light of the mind, light of the Dharma, for it leads to the attainment of the absorption of an undisturbed mind, the absorption of an undisturbed mind. So to me, this is pouring water into water. You know, that we become totally absorbed. That water from the pitcher that you're pouring into a larger pitcher or a bowl or the ocean, whatever, it becomes totally absorbed. There's no difference between the two waters anymore. And this is what it is this is what our Buddha nature is. This is what our true nature is. To become like that, to be able to come from the top down and see all dimensions simultaneously, spontaneously, and not divide and say, oh, these are the different dimensions, but just to become that light, that clear light, or however you wish to express that awareness, that attainment of the absorption of the undisturbed mind, that there's nothing that can change that. And so this is an analogy or a way of looking at the Vajrayana, the indestructible vehicle, the indestructible pathway, the indestructible mind that is totally absorbed in the true nature, into our heart center. Whatever this thinks of is just passing right through. Whatever this feels, our physical body, whatever pain it has, whatever happiness it has, just passes right through. And that there is just this total absorption in the Dharma itself and into that true nature. So Kunga, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you for that. I wanted to, when I read this, the first thing it made me think of was what wrong absorption leads to. Like, so right absorption leads to what you are explaining, and then wrong absorption doesn't lead to an undisturbed mind. And I think of, when I thought of absorption, I think about addictions, you know, but they could be, you know, it could be addictions to alcohol or drugs or television or pornography. And those things, you know, people becomes absorbed in those things, and they'll put all other things in their life aside for those absorptions, but it doesn't lead to an undisturbed mind. It actually leads to a more disturbed mind. So that's what I thought of, you know, the contrast between that and the what right absorption is versus what is unskillful absorption. Thank you.
Thank you. Bernie, would you like to make a comment about this?
Well, absorption, I mean, these last several, starting with last several of these Eightfold Paths are not paradoxical in the way the earlier ones were. It's obvious that if you have correct absorption that you're going to have the attainment of absorption in an undisturbed mind, because that's more or less the definition of absorption. You attend to the object of meditation without any distraction. So it's a very straightforward one. So it's really doesn't acquire any sort of interpretation or explanation. It's just very straightforward, the same way that the previous couple, starting with right effort, were pretty straightforward. So, I mean, there's not really much to say, I don't think.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have a comment that you'd like to make?
No, it's just following on to what Bernie said. Well, some do, but he's saying about habits. It's about habits. What you do, this is why we do meditation, because you're training yourself. And ultimately, if you're going to be enlightened, right, one day you'll sit down to meditate and you'll never stop. And I think that's kind of what Bernie was saying, that you have to build on it and build on it till it completely takes you over. But we got to keep at it. And we have to keep at it. We have to keep doing what we're doing, just more of it.
Do you remember years ago, I don't know, something I grew up with, they used to talk about that it only takes 15% of our brain power to be able to keep our body working and to be able to do our job and to be able to have relationships. Our ordinary mind, our ordinary life in place only takes 15% of our brain capacity. I don't know how they come up with this number, but nevertheless, it made a lot of sense to me. And then what that says is that there's 85% that is potential for us. And that this eightfold path really is a guide into that 85%. A way of being able to say, okay, 15% of my brain, I need to identify what all those things are and do that. Let the brain do that, but then let my 85% of the brain begin to explore these other things and to allow my body, speech, and mind to become absorbed in that. And that becomes totally transformative. Which brings me to the other metaphor, is we talk about that, we sit on the cushion and we go through this process of the stages of meditation where we're going through all these practices and visualizations and so on like that. And then we get to this point where all of a sudden, all time goes away. All visuals go away. Everything goes away. We have this moment of clarity, of something that is beyond our ability to be able to communicate it to ourselves or to anybody else. And it's life-changing. So the metaphor is that that's like a birth and a death. That the one who came in and sat down on the cushion dies. And that experience, that epiphany, or whatever you want to call it, that becomes the rebirth. And when you get up off the cushion, you take that rebirth with you. And that's maybe, we can explain it as being part of the 85% of the brain or whatever, but it's just the metaphor of the change that we go through. And the change that we go through is like pouring water into water, which is a great expression that Gotcha Rinpoche always uses. So what do you think of that? Does does that put a perspective on things? Does that give a view of what the Eightfold Path is? And remember, the Eightfold Path is the cause for the cessation of suffering. Remember, we're talking about this as the Four Noble Truths. And the Eightfold Path is a cause for the cessation of the suffering. And the suffering is the result of the causes of the five poisons and the 84,000 emotions and so on.
Lance, everything makes sense to me. And I think the one thing that, as I'm going through everything I'm going through, I had a distinct moment where things became binary, and I had a switch where it was easy to recognize myself as a spiritual being in I mean, I'm in like a body that's bone and it's just it's elemental. And once I had devotion and faith to that paradigm shift, all this other crap, like things about food, about the next vacation, all this stuff just got easy. And that's been in the last just few months where just all this anxiety about, I'm like, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's great. You don't ever need another bottle of Xanax or a GABA transmitter. Once you have that moment, you're like, it actually doesn't matter. And if you're feeling it, you're probably feeling someone else's stuff, and you need to, as you say, put on your suit of armor.
Yeah. So welcome to the first day of the rest of your life.
It's really nice being on the vacation of breaking free from samsara.
We're closer to enlightenment. We're already enlightened beings. We just don't recognize it. We're not accepting it. You can continue doing your job, continue your relationships, but you're doing it as an enlightened being.
Truly, and everything is so much easier. It's just I'm not angry at anyone anymore. I'm like they're just doing the best they can, and it's not about me, and it's not personal.
And remember when we were talking about the 12 links of interdependent origination, and we talked about the 12th link was the old man who was, walking the path, with a cane, and he had this big sack on his back of all his karma, and that's what he took with him into his next life. But what we're doing is we're lessening that load. That karma is going away. That we're dropping the karma.
Yeah, this is a beautiful discussion. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, well, anybody else have some closing comments?
I just want to say great discussion tonight. I thank you, Zara, for sharing a lot of things, and everybody else too.
Yeah, definitely. Got a lot of, you have such a nice range of perspectives. It's just really fun.
Very good, yes. Kunga.
Oh, I just wanted to remind everyone that Bernie had brought up in a couple meetings ago that this was the last of the 37 practices of awakening. That all of this started back on 4.21 with the 4 grounds of mindfulness. That's in the glossary, and it's, if you look up 37 practices of awakening, it lists all these things from 4.21 all the way to what we just finished at 4.26.
Yes, very good. Thank you. And they're also listed in the Jewel Ornament of Liberation with from the perspective of Gampopa. So you might enjoy taking the time to read it, looking at it from different perspectives, different points of view, and so on, and developing your own, experiencing it your own way. But we still will continue because we're not finished. We just finished those 37 points, but there's still we've still got 2 more pages to go, which will continue. And to finish this particular chapter, we have several pages. So I'm glad you all are so dedicated to coming here and having these discussions. And I think sometimes we have to, make ourselves become engaged. But thankfully, we do that for our benefit and for the benefit of each other. We're helping each other. Okay, so to do our dedication, we go to the dedication prayer by Lord Jigden Sumgun. If we go to our prayer book, page 36 and 37. So if everybody will recite out loud along with myself and everybody else. Glorious, holy, venerable, precious kind root and lineage lamas, divine assembly of yidams and assemblies of Buddhas, bodhisattvas, yogins, yoginis, and dakinis, dwelling in the 10 directions, please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in the 3 times by myself and all sentient beings in samsara and nirvana and the innate word of virtue not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samsara, or rebirth as a Shravaka or Pratyeka Buddha. May all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, obstructors who harm, misleading Maras, and the hordes of demons, experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachment to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise even at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such and the pervading clarity of Dharmata. May I, in any case, gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo. Om, Ah, Hong. Om, Ah, Hong. Om, Ah, Hong. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all sentient beings. Thank you very, very much.
And can I make a quick request? If anyone
Sure.
has time to send some prayers and love out to my my baby sister is having a emergency, not an emergency, a planned C-section tomorrow morning around 8 a.m. giving birth to my new little nephew. So if you can send your prayers and love and positivity her way, please do.
Oh my
Absolutely.
gosh! Yay! You're gonna be an uncle.
Yeah. It's her second kid, so I mean, I have an uncle, but yeah, it's really it's exciting, and so hopefully everything goes well with the surgery and everything. It's great.
Jayata Om Bigadze Bigadze Maha Bigadze Bigadze Raja Samogate Soha. Very good.
Om Ahum, Om Ahum.
Om Ahum, Om Ahum,
Ahum.
Om
Thank you. It was great being with you tonight. Thank you, Lance.
Ahum. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you all soon.